Hey everyone, welcome to Man Cave Insider episode 7. My name is Dennis Clark. Thank you for joining. If you like what you see, make sure you subscribe down below so you can see past and future episodes. Now we're here in my man cave and it's filled with things that I've collected my entire life, and these are the stories behind them. Each episode is selected by my 10-year-old daughter, and today we're going to be talking about the Spider-Man trilogy, the first 3 Spider-Man movies released. Now, everyone knows Spider-Man was based on the Marvel comic created by Stan Lee in the early 60s about a teenage boy named Peter Parker who was bitten by a radioactive spider and gained superpowers. There have been a few cartoon versions of Spider-Man over the years. In the late 70s, CBS actually released a live-action Spider-Man TV show, which had aired for about 15 episodes and then was canceled. Throughout the 80s and 90s, the goal was to get Spider-Man on the big screen, and there had been various projects in different stages of development. At one point, James Cameron had actually written a 45-page treatment of the Spider-Man film. In the late 90s, the rights for the film were sold to Columbia Pictures, owned by Sony, and in January of 2001, the announcement was official. They were ready to go on the first ever live-action Spider-Man movie. It was going to be directed by Sam Rami, and it starred Tobey Maguire as Peter Parker / Spider-Man. The role of Mary Jane Watson, the girl next door, was going to be played by Kirsten Dunst. James Franco was going to play Peter's friend Harry Osborn, and his father, Norman Osborn, was going to be played by Willem Dafoe, and his character, of course, became the Green Goblin during the movie. They shot the movie from January to June of that year, and in the summer of 2001, they released the first teaser trailer for the movie to much anticipation. The trailer itself showed a scene of bank robbers robbing a bank, going up to the roof and escaping by helicopter. While escaping, the helicopter is pulled back by a web, and the end shot of the trailer shows the helicopter on a giant web between the Twin Towers. Of course, a couple of months later, the 9/11 attacks happened. This trailer was quickly pulled from all theaters and never seen again. In fact, the following week, Sony was releasing the movie A Knight's Tale with Heath Ledger on VHS, which had that trailer on the videotape. They recalled all copies of the movie, took the trailer out, and then re-released it before the original street date. Now, that scene in the movie and any footage of the Twin Towers were taken out when the final movie was released in 2002. Now, the plot of the movie stuck very closely to the comic books and the origin of Spider-Man, in the characters, in the life of Peter Parker. However, there was one difference which caused a little bit of a controversy in comic book purists. In the comic book, the web shooters are created by Peter Parker. That is something that he came up with and put them on his wrist to shoot the webs. But what they felt with the movie is, since he already had the powers of a spider, he should be able to shoot the webs naturally. In the end, it made very little difference because Spider-Man was the first movie to make over $100 million on its opening weekend. Sony quickly announced a sequel, Spider-Man 2, to be coming out in the summer of 2004. Now, the character of the Green Goblin was played by Willem Dafoe, whose character in the movie was Norman Osborn. The end of the movie, he's killed and tells Peter not to reveal the secret to his son Harry. And it ends with his son Harry seeing Spider-Man putting his father's dead body down in their house. Therefore, Harry Osborn has a resentment towards Spider-Man, which plays in Spider-Man's 2 and 3. Now, the villain for Spider-Man 2, they went with another popular villain from the comic books, Doc Ock, Dr. Octopus, aka Otto Octavius. And an interesting choice was the selection of Alfred Molina to play Octavius. At the time, Molina was known mainly as more of a dramatic actor, having done very little action work. And by having only one villain, it gave the characters more time to develop their relationships throughout the movie. And Spider-Man 2 had an even bigger reception than the original Spider-Man movie, and they announced a third Spider-Man movie for the summer of 2007. At the end of Spider-Man 2, they left a few things open for a third one. one of which was Peter and Mary Jane finally getting together. The other one was Harry Osborn finding out that his father was the Green Goblin. So for Spider-Man 3, there was a lot in the movie. They hired Thomas Hayden Church, who had recently been nominated for an Academy Award for the movie Sideways, to play Flint Marko, aka the Sandman. James Franco's character assumed the powers of his father and became known as the New Goblin, and instead of having the glider, had kind of a like a snowboard thing. And then they brought in the black suit Spider-Man, aka Venom, which had been a very popular character in the comic books. Now, the movie itself did very well, and globally, it was actually the highest grossing of all three Spider-Man movies. However, the response by audiences and critics were mixed, with three villains, with new characters being introduced, such as Gwen Stacy and Eddie Brock. You know, there was many plot lines throughout the movie, and there had been a couple of scenes that played kind of cheesy about, you know, Peter Parker's dancing scene. So, you know, the movie was definitely the least well-received of the three movies. But since it had been such a big moneymaker, Sony announced Spider-Man 4 for 2011. However, the movie never came to be. It was in development. Sam Rami and Tobey Maguire were going to be coming back. The villain was going to be the Vulture. They were also going to bring in the Black Cat, which was going to be played by Anne Hathaway. However, with the release date already set, Sam Raimi was not happy with the way the script was developing and backed out of the project. And they quickly announced that they were going to be rebooting Spider-Man for the summer of 2012. And they did so with The Amazing Spider-Man starring Andrew Garfield. And then Amazing Spider-Man 2 was released 2 years later. Now, the reception for the Amazing Spider-Man movies was good, but not as well received as the first three. Eventually, they decided they were going to be rebooting Spider-Man yet again, but it was going to be now part of the Marvel Cinematic Universe, which was over at Disney. They made a deal where Spider-Man would appear in the Marvel movies at Disney, and other characters would appear in Spider-Man movies from Sony. So they introduced Spider-Man in Captain America Civil War, and then they released Spider-Man Homecoming, and then Spider-Man appeared in Avengers Infinity War and Endgame, and then they released the second standalone one, Spider-Man Far From Home, starring Tom Holland. A third movie is currently in development for December of 2021. But it was the original three movies that started the whole thing. And this set comes in a hardcover case, and what's nice about it is it covers everything from all three movies. You've got a booklet with pictures and stories about the development, shooting, and release of all three movies. Then you get 7 discs. You get all three movies on Blu-ray and all three movies on 4K. Now with Spider-Man 2, there was 2 versions of the movie. There was Spider-Man 2 theatrical version, then there was Spider-Man 2.1, which featured an extra 8 minutes. And then of course there was Spider-Man 3 Blu-ray and 4K, and then there's a 7th bonus disc. And on this bonus disc, they have an editor's cut of Spider-Man 3 featuring footage not seen in the original movie. And of course, it's got digital copies of all the movies as well. So, the future of Spider-Man movies is very promising, with more movies being part of the Marvel Universe. But it was the original 3 movies, directed by Sam Raimi, starring Tobey Maguire, that set the stage for the whole thing. I'm going to put the link down below on where you can get this and where you can get other Spider-Man movies. And of course, if you like what you see, make sure you subscribe to our channel. Thank you very much for watching this episode of Man Cave Insider. We look forward to seeing you next time.